Chapter 2 An Opportune Moment. Of course, Father Passy was not mistaken when he decided that his dear boy would come back, and perhaps even perceived the true meaning of the mood of Alyosha's soul. Nevertheless, I shall frankly admit that it would be very difficult for me now to convey clearly the precise meaning of this strange and uncertain moment in the life of the hero of my story, whom I love so much and who is still so young. To the rueful question Father Passy addressed to Alyosha, or are you too with those of little faith? I could of course answer firmly for Alyosha. No, he is not with those of little faith. Moreover, it was even quite the opposite. All his dismay arose precisely because his faith was so great. But dismay there was, it did arise, and it was so tormenting that even later, long afterwards, Alyosha considered this rueful day one of the most painful and fatal days of his life. If I were asked directly, could all this anguish and such great perturbation have arisen in him only because, instead of beginning at once to produce healings, the body of his elder on the contrary showed sign of early corruption, I would answer without hesitation, yes, indeed it was so. I would only ask the reader not to be in too great a hurry to laugh at my young man's pure heart. Not only I have no intention of apologizing for him, of excusing and justifying his simple faith on account of his youth, for instance, or the little progress he made formerly in the study of science, and so on and so forth. But I will do the opposite and declare firmly that I sincerely respect the nature of his heart. No doubt some other young man who takes his heart impressions more prudently, who has already learned how to love not ardently but just lukewarmly, whose thoughts, though correct, are too reasonable, and therefore more cheap. For his age, such a young man, I say, would avoid what happened to my young man. But in certain cases, really, it is more honorable to yield to some passion, however unwise, if it springs from great love, than not to yield to it at all. Still more so in youth, for a young man who is constantly too reasonable and suspect, and of too cheap a price. That is my opinion. But reasonable people may exclaim at this point, not every young man can believe in such prejudices, and your young man is no example for others. To this I again reply, yes, my young man believed fiercely and unshakably, but still I do not apologize for him. You see, though I declared above that I was not going to explain, excuse, or justify my hero, I find that it is necessary for the further comprehension of my story to understand certain things. I will say this much. It was not matter of a miracle. It was not an expectation of miracles. Frivolous, where did it go, goddamn? Frivolous in its impatience. Alyosha did not need miracles then for the triumph of certain convictions, nor so that some sort of formal, preconceived idea would quickly triumph over another. Oh no, by no means. In all these, and above all else, in the first place, there stood before him the person, and only the person of his beloved elder, the person of the righteous man whom he revered to the point of adoration. That was just it, that the entirety of the love for all and all that lay hidden in his young and pure heart, then and during the whole previous year, was at times as if wholly concentrated, perhaps even incorrectly, mainly on just one being, at least in the strongest impulses of his heart, on his beloved elder, now deceased. True, this being has stood before him as an indisputable ideal for so long that all his youthful powers and all their yearning could not but turn to this ideal exclusively, in some moments even to the forgetting of all and all. He himself remembered later that on that painful day he quite forgot his brother Dmitri, about whom he had been so worried and grieved the day before. He also forgot to take 200 rubles to Ilyoshka father, as he had also so fervently intended to do the day before. Again, it was not miracles he needed, but only a higher justice, which, as he believed, had been violated. It was this that wounded his heart so cruelly and suddenly. And what matter if, in the course of events, this justice has assumed in Alyosha's expectations the form of those miracles expected immediately from the remains of his adored former teacher? Everyone in the monastery thought and expected the same, even those whose minds Alyosha revered, Father Passy himself, for example, and so Alyosha, not troubling himself with any doubt, clothed his dream in the same form as all the others. And it had been settled thus in his heart for a long time. Though the whole year of his life in the monastery and his heart had acquired the habit of expecting it, but it was justice. Justice he thirsted for, not simply miracles. And now he who, according to his hope, was to have been exalted higher than anyone in the whole world, this very man, instead of receiving the glory that was due him, was suddenly thrown down and disgraced? Why? Who had decreed it? Who could have judged so? These were the questions that immediately tormented his inexperienced and virgin heart. He could not bear without insult, even without bitterness of heart, that this most righteous of righteous men should be given over to such derisive and spiteful jeering from a crowd so frivolous and so far beneath him. Let there be no miracles, let nothing miraculous be revealed. Let that which was expected immediately not come to pass. But why should there be this ignominy? Why should the same be permitted? Why this hasty corruption which forestalled nature, as the spiteful monks were saying? Why this sign which they now so triumphantly brought forth together with Father Farrapoint, and why did they believe they had any right to bring it forth? Where was Providence added finger? Why did it hide its finger at the moment, at necessary moment, Alyosha thought, as if wanting to submit itself to the blind, mute, merciless laws of nature? That was why Alyosha's heart was bleeding, and of course, as I have already said, here first of all was the person he loved more than anything in the world. And this very person was disgraced. This very person was defamed. Let this murmuring of my young man be thoughtless and rash, but I repeat again for the third time, I'm glad that at such moment my young man turned out to be not so reasonable. The time will come for an intelligent man to be reasonable. But if at such an exceptional moment there is no love to be found in a young man's heart, then when will it come? I must not, however, fail to mention in this connection a certain strange phenomenon that did, if only momentarily, reveal itself in Alyosha's mind at this fatal and confused moment. This new something that appeared in flesh consisted of a certain tormenting impression from his conversation with his brother Ivan the day before, which Alyosha now kept recalling, precisely now. Oh, not that any of his basic, so to speak, elemental beliefs were shaken in his soul. He loved his God and become vague but tormenting and evil impression from the recollection of the previous day's conversation with his brother Ivan now suddenly stirred again in his soul, demanding more and more to come to the surface. It was already quite dark when Rakitin passed through the pine grove from the hermitage to the monastery, suddenly noticed Alyosha lying face down on the ground under a tree, motionless and as if asleep. He went up and called him by name. Is that you, Alexei? Can it be that? He began astonished, but stopped without finishing. He was going to say, Can it be that you have come to this? Alyosha did not glance up at him, but from a slight movement, Rakitin guessed at once that he had heard and understood him. What's the matter with you? He went on in surprise. But the surprise on his face was already beginning to be supplanted by a smile that turned more and more sarcastic. Listen, I've been looking for you for over 2 hours. You suddenly disappeared from the place. What are you doing here? What is all this blessed nonsense? Look at me, least. Alyosha raised his head, sat up and leaned his back against the tree. He was not crying, but his face wore an expression of suffering, and there was irritation in his eyes. He did not look at Rakitin, incidentally, but somewhere aside. You have quite changed countenance. No more of that old notorious meekness of yours. Are you angry with somebody or what? Offended? Leave me alone, Alyosha said suddenly, still without looking at him, and waved his hand wearily. Oh no, so that's how we are now? We are snappish, just like the other models, and we used to be an angel. Well, Alyosha, you surprise me. Do you know that I mean it? It's a long time since anything here has surprised me. Still, I did always consider you an educated man. Alyosha finally looked at him, but somehow distractedly, as if he still sarcastically understood him. Can it be just because your old man got himself stung? Can it be that you seriously believed he would start pulling off miracles? Rakitin exclaimed, passing again to the most genuine amazement. I believe, and I want to believe, and I will believe, and what more do you want? Alyosha cried irritably. Precisely nothing, my dear. Ah, the devil. But even 13-year-old schoolboys don't believe such things anymore. Still, ah, the devil. So you have gotten angry with your God now. You have rebelled. They passed you over for promotion. You didn't get a medal for the feast day. Ah, you. Alyosha gave Rakitin a long look. His eyes somehow narrowed and something flashed in them, but not anger at Rakitin. I did not rebel against my God. I simply do not accept his world. Alyosha suddenly smiled crookedly. What do you mean? You don't accept his world? Rakitin thought over his reply for a moment. What sort of gibberish is that? Alyosha did not answer. Well, enough talk of trifles, now to business. Did you eat anything today? I don't remember. I think I did. By the looks of you, you need fortifying. What a sorry sight. You didn't sleep last night, so I hear you had a meeting and then all this fuss and muss. I bet you had nothing but a piece of blessed bread to chew on. I've got a hunk of sausage here in my pocket. I brought it from town just in case. Because I was coming here, only you probably won't. Let's have your sausage. Aha, so that's how it is. Real rebellion, barricades and all. Well, brother, that's not to be sneered at. Let's go to my place. I would love a shot of vodka right now. I'm dead tired. You wouldn't go far as to have vodka, or would you? Let's have your vodka. Say, amazing, brother. Rakitin rolled his eyes. Well, one way or the other, vodka or sausage. It's a brave thing, a fine thing not to be missed. Let's go. Alyosha silently got up from the ground and went after Rakitin. If your brother Venichka could not see it, if your brother Venichka could see it, wouldn't he be surprised? By the way, your good brother Ivan Fyodorovich went off to Moscow this morning. Did you know that? Yes, Alyosha said indifferently, and suddenly the image of his brother Dmitri flashed through his mind. But only flashed, and though it reminded him of something, some urgent business which could not be put off even a minute longer, some duty, some terrible responsibility, this recollection did not make any impression on him, did not reach his heart. It fleeted through his memory and was forgotten. But long after, Alyosha kept remembering it. Your dear brother Venichka once pronounced me a giftless liberal windbag. And you too could not help letting me know once that I was dishonest. Very well. Now we'll see how gifted and honest you are. Bah, listen. He raised his voice again. Let's bypass the monastery and take the path straight to town. By the way, I need to stop and see Kokhlakov. Imagine. I wrote her a report about all that happened, and just think, she replied at once with a note in pencil. The lady simply loves writing notes. That she would not have expected such conduct from such a venerable old man as Father Zosima. That's what she wrote. Such conduct. She was angry, too. Ah, you all wait, he cried again all at once, stopped suddenly, and taking Alyosha by the shoulder, made him stop too. You know, Alyoshka? He looked searchingly in his eyes, entirely absorbed by the impression of the sudden new thought that had shone upon him, and though ostensibly laughing, he was apparently afraid to voice this sudden new thought of his. So hard was it still for him to believe the surprising and quite unexpected mood in which he was seeing Alyosha now. Alyosha, do you know the best place of all for us to go now? He finally said timidly and ingratiatingly. It makes no difference, wherever you like. Let's go to Grishenka's, eh? Will you go? Rakitin finally uttered, all a tremble with timid expectancy. Let's go to Grishenka, Alyosha replied calmly at once, and this was so unexpected for Rakitin, that this prompt and calm assent, that he almost jumped back. Well? Now he shouted in amazement, and suddenly grasping Alyosha firmly by the arm, he led him quickly along the path. Still terribly fearful that his determination might disappear, they walked in silence. Rakitin was even afraid to start talking. And how glad she will be, how glad, he muttered and felt silent again. It was not at all to make Grushenka glad that he was leading Alyosha to her. He was a serious man and never undertook anything without the aim of profiting from it. His aim this time was twofold. First, a revengeful one, that is, to see the disgrace of the righteous man, the probable fall of Alyosha from the saints to the sinners, which he was already souring in anticipation. And second, he had in mind a material aim as well, one rather profitable for himself, of which more shall be shared below. Well, if such a moment has come along, he thought, gaily and maliciously to himself, then we'd better just catch it by the scruff of the neck, the moment I mean, because it's very opportune for us.